All right, so welcome to our class on skill planning, the basics of what skills are and how to plan out your skill queue. So some of you guys are fairly experienced in Eve. I think at least everybody who I see in the voice channel right now at least started Eve at one point and came back. So if any of this is familiar to you guys, I apologize. We're going to go through it anyways for the sake of people who are going to be watching the recording later. But this is going to serve as an introduction to kind of the theory behind skills and how to plan out what you want to do in the future. So, to start with, so skills are found in the skills tab of our character sheet up here from right underneath the Neocom uh, button. Also, Alt A is the shortcut to get there. It has all the skills in the game. It's wonderful. You can see everything from spaceship command skills to trade skills and everything in between. You can also search skills right here. So if I wanted to find out what my cloaking skill is, I can just type in cloak right there, search all the skills, and find it. This is handy because there are a lot of skills. Now, each skill has what's called a primary and secondary attribute that determines how fast it skills. So you can see for cloaking, the primary attribute is intelligence, the secondary attribute is memory. This is going to be important when we get to our clone management stuff later today, because we'll be talking a lot more about the attributes during that class there. You can see here, however, what the skill actually trains, as well as a description of the skill, the requirements for the skill, etc., just by right-clicking and going to show info. Again, for the three of you who are on here, this is probably nothing new, but I'm making this recording with people who could be brand new to the game in mind. So the training queue for Omega players, you can have up to 50 skills in the queue. You can, and it can be any number of skills. If you are training more advanced skills, you just have to have the requirements in the queue before you train the more advanced skill that has requirements. You can train. There's not a time limit that I'm aware of how long the skills can last. I mean, you can see here some of these skills are 20, 30 days that are in my skill queue. And my total skill queue currently sits at 50 skills in the skill queue and 247 days, 13 hours, and 41 minutes. It's intense. Um, and that's pretty common. The older your character gets, to have longer and longer skill queues, to the point where after you load it up, you could go months at a time before you really are paying attention to where you're at in the skill queue, because you're just it's just chugging away and you're playing the game, right? So this is the basics of skills here in the character sheet. You can use things called skill injectors to inject skill points. When you, as well as the daily login bonus, I think at the 15-day mark gives you 150,000 unallocated skills. You can apply those skills pretty easily in the skill queue by just right-clicking on it, apply skill points, and typing in whatever number of skill points that you have to actually apply. You can actually extract skill points as well if you buy a unused skill extractor and use that to sell on the market for ISKs so that somebody else can use it. So that's the basics of skills in the game, and where I'm going to go next is gonna be more meta outside the game of how we plan what we want to do and how we go about executing that. So before I go any further, are there any questions on just the basics of skills and the basics of the skill queue in the game?
All seems like they used to be.
All seems like it used to be. Absolutely, they have not really significantly changed this in a long time. All right. So with that, the question becomes, how do I choose what to train, and how do I plan what I'm going to train when, especially out past the 50 skill limit, right? A good scenario that we can look at is, I have almost always skilled Caldari and missiles. That's been my character's thing. And then recently, our corporation decided to go Galente and armor for our and guns for our doctrine. I didn't have any of those skills, right? So I had to completely clear out and retool my skill queue to get those, and so I had to start making some decisions about what I trained and how. And I found that, especially when a lot of the skills are small skills, I ran up against that 50 skill limit really fast. And I actually needed to be able to see a little bit more of a longer term view. So I'm going to introduce you to a couple concepts that we're going to use in the game and then out of the game in a tool called Eve-Mon. But in the game, first and foremost, I'm going to introduce you to the idea of masteries, because this is going to be very important in our conversation about what to train. A lot of people hear, and a lot of people get the advice early on in the game from more experienced players that say choose a ship that you want to get into, and then train around that. Now, shame on us older players, because very rarely do we tell you what that actually means, right? Well, we just say, oh, just choose a ship, train around it, and you'll be fine. But when we say that, what we mean is train the ship itself, the fit, and train the mastery around it. Now, we're going to cover fitting in another class, but I'm going to show you a little bit about my journey into training Galente to kind of illustrate this. So I had command ships from Caldari, and I happen to have it already pretty much trained for Galente. So I decided to take a start and really start my training around that when I started to delve into this, because that was the ship I wanted to be able to fly. So first off, when you're choosing a strategy around skilling, you want to make sure that you have all the requirements for the ship trained or in your skill queue, right? So that's a no-brainer. If you want to fly a ship, first make sure you can get into the ship, and if you can't, then that's a little bit of a problem. Um, but but get into the hull of the ship. Now, of course, you don't want to fly the ship just because you can get into the hull, right? So you need to be able to fly the ship properly fitted. So the second step is to make sure that you can fit everything that you need to fit in your fitting window here. Let's go and let's take a look at my Astart fit. So this was the fit that I worked up for my Astart. You'll notice that obviously now I can fit it all. When I started this journey, I couldn't fit everything on here, and there were some warning labels here saying that I couldn't fit everything. Those are the skills that you'd want to train next. Train everything that you need to be training in order to get the fit that you need for the ship. If you can't get into the fit pretty soon after you fly the ship, don't fly the ship until you can get it fitted properly. Now, fitted properly, we'll talk about that again in the next class, but just as kind of a preview of that, that doesn't necessarily mean tier 2 everything, although there are some things that tier 2 is very important with. But you need to be able to at least be able to fire the guns. You need to be able to have a decent tank, etc. So make sure that you have the basics of the fit and can fly it. Now, the third and arguably most important thing is the mastery levels. Mastery levels are something that I don't think we talk about enough in Eve. Mastery levels are all the skills that you need to be able to fly the ship well. It's not enough to just be able to fly the ship. Flying the ship is not super difficult. You might take a couple months of training to get there, and to get the fit. That's fine too. But there's a lot of other skills that help you fly the ship well, and mastery levels can help us fly the ship well. So the first thing that you'll notice about mastery levels, and you may not know to look for it, but underneath the ship, in the ship tree, there's in parentheses there's Roman numerals. In this case, it's two. That shows you the highest mastery level that you've achieved with that ship. If you haven't achieved any, like in the case of the dreadnought here, that there's nothing there, right? So it's literally just Roman numerals or nothing at all. The highest that you can have is five, because the highest mastery available is five. So mastery skills become very important in choosing how we skill in the future, right? Getting level one mastery is not usually too difficult, but it gets more and more difficult each level and takes longer training each level after that. What I generally tell people is that to fly a ship really well, you need to at least get three, maybe four. So right now you'll see I'm at a two with the Astarte, and I can tell you, I took my Astarte out with some friends in L4s the other day, and it was bad. It was certifiably bad. It was not hitting things like I wanted it to, and it was still a pretty poor ship, right? So what you'll see is that in the ones and the twos of masteries, uh, you're going to fly the ship, but it's not going to perform how you want it to perform. It's not going to perform optimally. These mastery levels help us get the skills to fly it optimally. There's a lot of different areas of skills included, and the tank that it runs off of. In this case, it has a specialization. It's a command ship, so it has command bursts as one of the skill levels. Core spaceship operation, fitting, target management, drones. Of course, drones are a Galente staple. Turrets, navigation, again command bursts, and tackling. All these are important parts of being able to fly the Astarte well, right? So you'll see a check mark if you've achieved the mastery in that particular area, and if you haven't, you will see a little dot. So in case of medium hybrid turrets, you will see that it's not fully trained, and there's a little dot there. You can expand it and see exactly what isn't trained. In this case, it's a bunch of gunnery skills that I haven't gotten trained yet, but are in my skill queue, and you can add them right to your skill queue uh, directly from this, just like any other place where you can hover over the skills. So the mastery levels become very important. They're not sexy to train, and that's the painful thing for a lot of people. Um, they're not fun. Like Sharpshooter 4, I can't fly a new ship by training Sharpshooter 4. I don't get a new module by skilling Sharpshooter 4. What I do get is 5% larger weapon optimal range, right? So it's these small things that add up that really make it so that we can fly our ships really well. So when you're planning your skill queue, it's not enough just to get into a ship, and it's not enough just to get the right ship fit that you want. You've got to get a lot of these supporting skills. Now you can see that it tells you how long each of these will take to train. You can also see that in order to get to mastery level 3, it'll take me 10 days, 15 hours, 10 minutes, and 17 seconds. So that gives you an idea of how difficult this will be to reach. Now 10 days in the world of Eve is really not that much time, right? 26 days to get to level 4. So this includes the 10 days for the level 3, but there's about an extra 16 days on top of that. And you'll notice that a lot of these things that get added on are not things that are in level 3. So, like railgun specialization and hybrid turret 5, those are required for level 4. Basically, I have to have the tier 2 guns for level 4, right? So it ends up supporting our fitting choices as we advance in the ship too. So they're very, very helpful there. Now, getting to level 5, that's kind of the gold standard, but you'll see a jump from 26 days of training to 495 days of training. So it's kind of an exponential curve of how difficult it is to train to get to each of these levels. In order to get to level 5, I'd have to spend a year and a half training this stuff. Now, one of the really cool things about using mastery, though, is that there is a lot of overlap across many different ships with mastery levels. For instance, almost all Galente ships, if not all Galente ships, share the armor tanking mastery. So that if you get level 4 in armor tanking mastery for the Astarte, you've got it virtually everywhere. And you can see that that I've got level 2 in my mastery for the Astarte. And when I did that, even though I planned it around the Astarte, I have level 2 in mastery on almost everything else. There's a couple that I have level 3 and like one that's level 1. But almost everything else I already have level 2. So this doesn't just impact your command ships or whatever ship you're training around. It can impact everything in that entire line. So it just to kind of recap that. First, train into the ship that you want to fly. Then train into the fitting, and then train the mastery levels, preferably to about level 3 or level 4, to try to master flying that ship. Um, if you are a completionist in other games, training to mastery level 5 right off the bat is probably not feasible. But once you've been in the game for a few years, mastery level 5 is not nearly as daunting because you've already trained a lot of those things along the way. So, does that make sense so far? Any questions about kind of that skilling strategy?
Well, seems right.
I've got one. It's more clear for me now.
Awesome. Yeah, Dice?
Is there one?
I'm sorry?
Is there like a quick button to queue skills for a certain mastery, or do you have to hand put them in?
I don't think there is, but I'm going to show you the next step in this. I'm going to show you a way to plan your skills outside of the game and quickly import them in. So there will be a one-click sort of button to be able to do that, just not inside the game.
Breaker.
All right. So, can somebody real quick? Can you recap for me kind of the three things that you take into account when you're planning your skill queue?
Tony, can I say something?
Sure.
Did you talk about, or is that coming about attributes that you can remap those to speed up the skill learning time?
We'll be talking about that in our clone management class later this afternoon.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So what can somebody throw out what one of the three things that you need to take into account when you're trying to skill something new, particularly a new ship?
Check the requirements.
Check the requirements. You want to make sure you skill the requirements to get in the ship, right? What's another one?
Other required skills.
Yep, required skills. What's another one? The fitting, right? Fitting's important. Being able to train all the skills necessary to fit the ship. And what's the third one?
Mastery?
Mastery. You got it. So when you're trying to plan your skill queue around something that you want to do, particularly a specific ship, uh, you got to train the required skills to do it, the the required fit to do it, and the mastery. You got to keep all three of those things in mind. Just one final anecdote to show this point. One of the things that I see new players do all the time is they put their entire training queue towards getting into a battle cruiser or a battleship, and they get to fly the ship, and then they get really confused why they keep dying and losing millions and millions of ISK. And a lot of times it's because they either didn't train the right skills to fit the ship, or they didn't train the mastery skills around flying the ship well. It's not enough to just be able to get in and undock in a Dominix. You have to have the skills to fly it properly. All right, so
Exactly where I'm stuck right now. I can run the dummy, but I can't run it effectively with moving all my skill points.
yeah, that's tough, isn't it? And
Well, they have joined skills, so that was one. Like I knew it was going to happen, but it's just not effective without sentry drones.
it's really hard, isn't it? So yeah, so now let's talk about planning out our skill queues, because if you're anything like me, you go in here and you say, okay, I want to fly the Dominix, and I start adding all of my Mastery One skills to the queue. By the way, another thing that's tempting for people to do is to skip right to Mastery 4 and start loading up and making all of these blue. And what you find out is that you end up probably about right here before you run out of skill queue room. So, what I advocate for people to do is to work on getting all the mastery level 1 stuff and work your way up. That way, you're seeing incremental increase across the board rather than trying to get just straight to mastery level 4 there. But you start loading up all of your skill queues. You get through all your mastery level 1 stuff. You get to mastery level 2, and partway through mastery level 2, you run out of space in your skill queue. And that's fine. You can remember to do that and manage it like that. But some Eve players out there over the last, oh god, I don't even know when the first version of this tool was released, but many, many years ago, they released a tool called Eve-Mon to help with skill planning and help plan that out just a little bit better. So the second half of what we're going to talk about today revolves around Eve-Mon. So Eve-Mon is a way that we can monitor our character outside of the game, kind of like a, a pre a smartphone version of the Eve app that we have on our cell phones now. It shows our skill queue, a lot of different character information, etc. So to get Eve-Mon installed, there is a GitHub site here. I will link the address to you guys here in the chat. Um, this uses your API information from ESI to link to your characters and bring the information of what's going on with them in the game to this out of the game. When you go here, just click on install 4.0.17.exe, or if you are on Mac or Linux, there are some other files here. I am not going to walk you through how to install those because I frankly have no idea. So if you're on Mac or Linux, I know that this runs in Wine, and you can work on it that way. But you install the .exe, and I'll give you guys a minute to install it if you want to, while I start talking through some of the basics here. So when Eve-Mon comes up, of course, you won't see all of your characters. Here are my characters and their lovely, lovely happenings. Um, and I've actually created a test person, a blank file that we'll use for all of our stuff. But what you'll do to add a new character is just go up to File and hit Add Character. It'll come up with a nice Eve login with Eve Online button that you can. It'll take you to a website and you'll sign in with your Eve credentials, just like you do with Eve HR or with Discord when you authenticated via Discord. Same exact function. And it'll ask you what character you want to import once you log in with your Eve credentials. I'm not going to do that because I've already got all my characters, and I'm actually going to be using a test character for this. So, when you have your test file up, and everyone can see my screen just fine still, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
I wanted to make sure that that because sometimes it just gets stuck on Eve and doesn't change when I actually switch windows. But if you go here, you'll see that that a lot of this stuff is blank because I completely created a dummy test file. But you'll also see that that there's a lot of spaces for facts about your character, what the race is, what your ISK balance is, your birthday, the corp, alliance, security status, active ship, etc., as well as your attributes. And again, we're going to cover attributes later today and how they impact everything. But for today, what I want to show you guys is this. It'll show you where all of your skills are, and if you have if this was a real character in Eve, it would also have a tab here to show you your skill queue, and that'll show you all the same information that Eve does. But what this lets you do, and this is where we're going to be spending most of the rest of our time today for this class, is the plans button right up here. It lets you actually create a plan for how you want to train your character. Name for this plan I'll say is just test, because why not? And this is a much more powerful version of our skill queue in that it lets us plan out things for an unlimited amount of time. We can plan whatever we want, however we want, and we can actually plan. We all three of the things that we talked about. We talked about planning to fly the ship, to fit the ship, and the masteries around the ship. Right? We can plan all three of those things in here. So if right now we have a blank plan, there's nothing in here. We can browse the skills and choose individual skills here if we wanted to. So if I wanted to do command burst specialist, I could plan that to level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it would also plan all the prerequisites when I did that. So that's one way we can choose what to plan here. We can also plan a ship. So say I want to take this character and I want to plan, let's say, a thorax. The required skills are down here in the lower right, and I can hit Add All to Plan, or I can also right-click on that skill and hit Plan to level 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Right? In this case, I'm going to say Plan to level 4. Now, if I go back to the plan editor, you'll now see that I have all of the skills necessary to fly the ship, the Thorax, in my skill queue all the way up to Galente Cruiser 4. Make sense? Now, the next thing that it said that we talked about, if you remember, was we want to plan to be able to fit the ship, right? Maybe? No?
Well,
Yeah, right.
Okay. So if we go back in here, we have a corp fitting for the thorax. I'm going to take this corp fitting and I'm going to copy it. So if I hit these little buttons here, I can copy to clipboard. It's going to copy the entire fit of the ship to the clipboard just by clicking these three little buttons and hitting copy to clipboard. Now if I come back over here, I can use clipboard import. If that's not correct, loadout import. Sorry about that. And it takes everything that I had in that fit, and you'll see the entire fit listed here for everything. And I can say add to the plan. It'll add everything that's needed to add that ship to the plan here. Okay? So we added that. Now all of a sudden, rock on. We've got all these ships or all these skills needed to fit that fit. Now that fit was probably more advanced than if I was really taking a brand new character, I wouldn't put it straight to tier 2 drones right away. But I'm just doing this for illustrative effect here, right? Now already I've got a pretty solid skill queue of being able to fit the ship that I want to fit. But what was the third thing that we needed to remember to plan our skills around?
Masteries.
Masteries. So we're able to fly the ship, we're able to fit the ship. Now we got to go check out masteries. And that's available if you go to the ship browser and then we look at the thorax. There's the overview and then there is the mastery tab, and it has all the levels of mastery. Now, if you guys remember, I told you guys to not just go straight to level 4, right?
Right.
Like kind
Right.
of my direction was let's do level 1 first, and then level 2, and then level 3, right? So we're going to do the same thing here, where we right click on this and hit plan level 1, and if you open it up, you can see everything here, right? You can see everything that's there, and then we're going to go and we're going to do level 2, and we're going to do level 3, and then we're going to do level 4. If we go back over to our plan editor, we've got now a whole list of things, almost 200 days long, to get to flying an excellent thorax. Now, this is completely from scratch, right? This is literally this is a blank character from nothing. So they've got all of the different skills that they need after 200 or 197 days to be at mastery level 4, be able to fly the ship at level 4, and have a pretty decent fit on the ship. So I'm gonna show you a couple of other things here about this queue. One of the things that it'll tell you is that this is 158 skills, right? That's important because, of course, you can only plan 50 skills in your skill queue. So this gives you a view far beyond and far past what you're going to get just straight out of Eve, right? It would limit you to, I'm not sure exactly where it would stop, but it would probably stop somewhere around here, right? And that would be quite a lot of fun, but kind of prevents us from doing some long-term planning. It also tells you the number of days down here at the bottom that it'll take, the amount of ISK required to buy the skills, in this case 56 million, and it also tells you the amount of skill points required. Why is that important? Well, because some people are made of money and can buy 18 large and 5 small skill injectors to go through and just wipe out all those skills all at once. That's really expensive. I mean, if you think about, although less expensive than you'd think, if you think about every large skill injector costs approximately 10 US dollars, we're looking at somewhere around 180, 200 dollars, and you could just wipe all this out at once. Now that's obscene, and I don't know why you would do that, but that is there for the particularly well endowed wallets of the world.
And you will lose all the fun.
Right, right.
Pay for win.
So now we're ready to take this and bring it back to Eve, right? So what we can do is we can hit copy to clipboard. It'll copy this list to the clipboard. Now there's a couple things that you're going to want to do. If you don't have, if there are any skills in red, this means that the skill in question is not one that the character owns. Then the first thing you're going to want to do is copy a shopping list. And when you copy the shopping list and hit OK, it's just going to copy the names of the skills. And what you're going to do is you're going to go over to a starter system, your closest starter system. You're going to and you're going to dock at the starter system corp. You're going to hit multi-buy, and you're going to add the items listed in the keyboard. Now, I'm not someplace where we could buy these right now, so it's going to show up red for me. But if you're in a starter system in the NPC station, you'll be able to buy all of these books and get them pretty quickly. And once you buy the books in mass, you can actually select them in your hangar, and you can actually select all of them, right click on them, and hit inject skill, and it'll inject all of those skills directly from your hangar. That's really important because you're going to get some errors if you try to import this before you own the skills, and it gets to be a pain. They don't inject in the right order, and it's just easier if you have all of them injected prior to loading them in. What you do next would be you hit that copy to clipboard again, only this time it's not the shopping list. Just hit OK. You go back to your skill queue. And usually I would recommend when you do this having your entire skill queue cleared out. I'm not going to do that because I've put a lot of work into this sucker. But you just go right here and hit add the skills listed in the clipboard to the end of the queue. So you click that, it will automatically add up to 50, the first 50 of the skills that are in your plan to the queue. And periodically, if you want to continue down the plan that you've got here, you can just do that again where you copy to clipboard and add whatever skills aren't there to the end of your queue. Easy way to fill up your 50 skills and manage your skill queue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but Tal, those are not sorted by the time needed to be completed, right? So
Correct.
you can be uploading that list there, and some of them are gonna be like having like 9 days versus some of them that they can be training at 23 minutes or something, right?
Correct. And so if you want to manage it that way, you can actually manually drag these skills around in here. So you can drag them anywhere you want. If you wanted to move Galente Cruiser 5 down here, you could do that.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Yep. Now, generally speaking, the skills that you do, especially on the mastery levels for level 1, those are going to be short skills. So if you do the mastery level 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, it won't be exactly sorted according to the length of time, but generally speaking, you'll be training your shorter skills before your longer skills.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, and the multiplier is helping also, no?
So the multiplier on each skill just determines how long the shortest the level 1 skill takes to train, etc. Basically, how many skill points in total that skill has, right? Skill multipliers, usually the more prerequisite skill has, the longer it will take to train. So, for instance, if we look at medium drones, let's see, advanced drone avionics. That's a good example there. If we look at that, that's I don't know if it tells me what our doesn't tell me the skill multiplier directly in here, but you can see here that level 1 is 41 minutes. So 41 minutes for a level 1 skill of something is fairly long compared to like CPU management, of which the first one, well, it's already trained, so it doesn't tell me that. But the first one's like 8 minutes or something like that, right? So the more advanced the skill, the longer that skill's going to take.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So the other thing that I want to talk about, we've focused a lot around skilling around ships, because most commonly that's what we're trying to do, right? But there are other activities in Eve that are important other than flying ships, right?
Oh yeah,
So what's one of them that might be important?
industry and reprocessing.
Industry and reprocessing. That's a good example. So, what if instead of a thorax, what if we were making this guy a miner? Let me go and let's bring out the mining barges, and we will put this guy in a retriever. So we add all of that to the plan for getting him into the ship. We I'm not going to worry about the ship fit for right now, but we add the mastery levels. And the mastery levels here will probably take care of a little bit of the reprocessing, but maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't do a whole lot with the reprocessing. So we get them into mastery level 4 for this, right? And we find out that there are actually some other things that are important to mining after the fact, namely industry and reprocessing, right? So that's where this certificate browser comes in handy. The certificate browser has a lot of other sorts of things in it. For instance, if we want to get good at resource processing, we have a few different types of resource reprocessing here that we can get. Now, this is similar to a mastery level, but it's not related to a specific ship. So you'll be able to do level 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., just like you would with mastery. But in this case, it's things like Industry 1, reprocessing, Science 3, power grid, plagioclase, pyroxes, scordite, and feldspar processing, right? So we can plan that to level 1. And then level 2 takes us down and actually gets not only those to level 2s, but it adds Amber, Kernite, Jaspit, and Hermorphite to the list, right? Level 3, we do the same thing. It brings everything up to level 3. We plan that. Level 4, it adds on some more rare ores and takes everything to level 4, which, by the way, you have to have these to level 4 before you can use Tier 2 mining crystals on Tier 2 strip miners. And then finally, let's say we just want to go all out and get level 5 on reprocessing. I want to be a perfect reprocessor, be able to mine everything, and then do it perfectly after that. Similarly, we have resource harvesting, right? So we already have level 1, and when I right-click on level 2, you'll notice that plan level 2 is grayed out. That means that that we've already got all the skills necessary for level 2 in the skill queue already. So we'll just naturally get that. Level 3, it's the same. Level 4, it's the same. And level 5 is the only one that we could actually plan if we wanted to, right? So now we've got all 5 of those, and we've got a whole era of complementary skills to reprocessing. And before you know it, we are training for almost 2 years, so 586 days to get perfect skills in all of those competencies. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So the interesting thing is this gets really powerful when you don't just do this around one ship, however. So when you just do this around one ship, that's great, and that's very handy and powerful. But if you take into account everything that you want to be able to do in the game, you can start crafting a skill queue that will enable you to do everything that you want to do and balance all the priorities that you want to balance. A good example of that is on my, let's see, I don't have the character up right now. I've got a, so let me pull up. So I have a skill queue here. I just copied and pasted it into a text document so that I'd have access to it later. I created a brand new alt, and I created a skill queue for him that would get him into our standard thorax fit, our standard procurer fit for mining barges, and some basic and the basic um, uh, exploration frigate. So the three major activities that we do in the game, I created a skill queue that takes a brand new character right from scratch to being able to do all of the different types of activities and all the different types of events that we have. I gave or I've created a skill queue that a brand new character could do all that within like 6 weeks of starting the game, right? Or if a character happens to be a recruited character via the referral codes with Eve, with your 1 million skill points, you can actually get all of these skills and on your very first day of being an Eve, be able to do all three main activities that we do as a corp in with that 1 million skill points. So the power of this isn't necessarily just getting in one ship; it's balancing multiple priorities and putting together a plan that works for you with the things that you want to do. Right. So if you want to balance, for instance, mining and missioning, maybe you get to mastery level 1 on your mining ship, and then get mastery level 1 on your mission ship, and then just toggle between those masteries and get each of them progressively stronger and stronger. Right? You don't have to prioritize one specific activity. You get to decide the priority. You get to decide how you balance those things out. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That's how I made Shitty. He can first day he could fly the whole for mining
Yeah, absolutely.
with that 1 million skill points. About recruiting. In one day, I buy it with Rifa the implants, 3 pieces, so stick them in, and then pop, you could fly a skill full whatever.
Yeah, kind of handy. All right, so Darius, Dice, Maz, any questions around skilling, skill cues, anything that we've talked about today?
I'm pretty good on it. Like if I was looking for a refresher, that's what it did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me too, man. But
Yeah.
I'm still hanging with the attribute thing.
Attributes we'll talk in another class. We've got a whole class around clone management and attributes and all and implants and all of that nice jazz.
Cool.
Dice, are you all good? I put Dice to sleep, guys.
Hey, that Eve monitor thing has changed. That's good, man.
I'm good. I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining today, and we're gonna call it there. This record will be up probably later on today for everybody to take a look at who wants to. So thanks for joining, everybody.
I think
Thank you for this.
man.
Now, great information.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, mate.
Yeah.
Very nice done.
Thank you.